Is there such a thing as a politician who doesn't lie? Maybe, maybe not. But these all-time tricksters really take the cake. George Santos had already become the target of 3 criminal investigations by the time he was sworn into Congress. The New York Republican first made headlines when an article in the New York Times revealed he had lied about pretty much everything on his resume. He claimed to be a Baruch College graduate and a former asset manager who worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. Speaking to the New York Post in 2022, however, he admitted that he had never graduated from any institution of higher learning. He never worked those Wall Street jobs either. Meanwhile, on his campaign website, Santos estimated his family's firm, the DeValder Organization, to be worth $80 million. He subsequently came clean that he had made that all up too. The embattled congressman was also accused of misrepresenting himself as Jewish to secure campaign funding from wealthy donors. He later insisted,
"I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake. I didn't materialize from thin air."
The U.S. Justice Department begs to differ, however. In May 2023, Santos was slapped with 13 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and lying to Congress about his personal finances. The indictment alleges that Santos received unemployment benefits while he was working and used campaign finance funds to buy himself designer clothing. U.S. Attorney Breon Pace said the indictment was intended to hold Santos accountable for his many, quote, fraudulent schemes and brazen misrepresentations. On November 15, 2020, Donald Trump sparked a culture war with a barrage of tweets that began with, "I won the election." The former president subsequently embarked on a Twitter rant to end all Twitter rants, calling the results of the 2020 election fake and the process rigged. Then he blasted the whole thing as the most fraudulent election in history. What has become known as the Big Lie set off turmoil across the country and fueled the fire for the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021. At the time, election law expert Rick Hasson said, "I've never been more scared about American democracy than I am right now because of the metastasizing of the Big Lie. This is not the kind of thing I expected to ever worry about in the United States." Trump had a track record of telling lies. He told one of his worst in 2020 when he downplayed the burgeoning COVID-19 pandemic at a White House press conference. After Trump left the room, Dr. Anthony Fauci painted a very different picture of the situation.
As I've said many times, and I'll repeat it, the worst is yet ahead for us.
According to a 2021 report published in The Lancet, 40% of the deaths that occurred in the U.S. during the pandemic could have been avoided if Trump hadn't diminished its threat. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigned from his post in 2022 following a series of scandals, lies, and cover-ups from his 3 years in office. The straw that broke the camel's back involved his promotion of Chris Pincher, a member of parliament who had been accused of groping a fellow MP. Johnson knew about the allegations in 2019, but insisted he couldn't recall being told about them. Rory Stewart, a former Conservative MP, told Good Morning Britain,
"He's probably the best liar we've ever had as Prime Minister."
Years earlier, Johnson had been axed from his job at the Times for fabricating a quote and attributing it to his godfather, noted historian Sir Colin Lucas. Another time, Johnson was forced to deny that he had engaged in a 4-year affair with society writer Petronella Wyatt, dismissing the rumor as an inverted pyramid of piffle. On yet another occasion, then Tory leader Michael Howard stripped Johnson of his vice chair title, citing Johnson's sense of personal morality as his motive. Everything came to a head during the pandemic, however, when Johnson was accused of lying to Parliament about attending a series of drunken parties during lockdown. He said in his defense, "I thought that I was attending a work event." During COVID lockdown, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's national TV briefings were a calm in the storm for many Americans. In 2020, Cuomo even received the International Emmy Founders Award for use of television to reassure people around the world. He then signed a $5 million deal to pen a memoir based on his experiences, titled American Crisis: Leadership Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic. The beginning of Cuomo's fall from grace began when he issued an executive order requiring nursing homes to accept COVID-positive patients. In a 2021 conference call, Cuomo's aide Melissa DeRosa admitted the administration underreported nursing home deaths by about 50%. What made the bombshell revelation even worse was Cuomo's cringeworthy reaction to the report. At a press conference, he said,
"But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died."
That wasn't the only scandal Cuomo faced either, as the governor apparently enjoyed the attention of multiple female admirers. When his brother asked him about his love gov reputation on CNN, he said, "I've always been a soft guy. I am the love gov. I'm a cool dude in a loose mood." In 2021, Cuomo stepped down during his third term after 11 women accused him of sexual harassment. In May 2011, former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner found himself in hot water when he insisted that suggestive photos of a man's bulging crotch posted on his Twitter account were no more than a prank. He came clean a month later, admitting the pics were his. Within days, Weiner resigned from Congress. But Weiner's scandals didn't end there. In 2016, he began sexting a 15-year-old girl. After the texts were reported to the authorities, federal prosecutors confiscated his laptop, which later prompted FBI Director James Comey to open up an investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, a decision that may have cost Clinton the 2016 election. In 2017, Weiner was sentenced to 21 months behind bars for transferring obscene material to a minor. As for his job prospects these days in 2021, Weiner told the New York Times, "It's very narrow. The places that I can work without having the New York Post just make everyone's life miserable." Weiner later attended 12-step meetings for sex addicts and eventually served as CEO of Ice Stone, a company that makes countertops from recycled glass. Above all else, the downfall of former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer is marked by hypocrisy. The self-proclaimed Sheriff of Wall Street ran on a platform to crack down on white-collar crime and clean up the city. As the state's attorney general, he helped to bust 2 prostitution rings. But in 2008, his career imploded when he got caught up in another. Federal investigators say the Harvard Law alum used a friend's identity to hire high-end escorts. He reportedly paid the agency $80,000 over 2 years. Spitzer wasn't arrested, but he promptly resigned from office and apologized to his wife, Silda, who stood by him when he made the announcement. He added,
"I am deeply sorry that I did not live up to what was expected of me."
Spitzer was replaced by Lieutenant Governor David Paterson, who told the press, "He always acted so squeaky clean and would get really upset if you said anything even slightly off color. When people act like that, you know there's something wrong. But no one expected this." Ironically, Paterson wasn't so innocent either. During his first news conference, he came clean about several extramarital affairs, including one with an employee. He told the Daily News that he did this because he didn't want to be blackmailed. Meanwhile, Spitzer was divorced by his wife in 2014 following an affair with political strategist Liz Smith. Residents of Detroit had high hopes for Kwame Kilpatrick, who, at 31, was the city's youngest mayor when he was elected to office in 2001. But the man who became known as the hip-hop mayor will go down in history as the mastermind behind one of the most egregious cases of local grift. As prosecutor Mark Chukto told the New York Times, "The amount of crime, it was astonishing, and it had a huge impact on this city." In 2008, Kilpatrick resigned after being convicted of lying under oath about his involvement in a civil lawsuit. He was ordered to pay the city $1 million. 2 years later, he was incarcerated again after a judge ruled he had falsified his ability to make restitution payments. Apparently, Kilpatrick had claimed he only had $6 a month in disposable income. Then in 2010, Kilpatrick and a number of other officials were indicted in a massive corruption scheme that prosecutors say netted them nearly $10 million, all while the Motor City was in dire financial straits. 3 years later, Kilpatrick was convicted of 24 counts of extortion, racketeering, and fraud. He was sentenced to 28 years behind bars, though his sentence was eventually commuted by Donald Trump. Political consultant Adolph Mongo told the New York Times, "He's become the poster child of what went wrong with the city and why it went bankrupt." In 2022, Georgia Republican Herschel Walker lost his bid for a U.S. Senate seat, but he won a reputation as a world-class liar. The former Georgia Bulldog star didn't earn a degree from the University of Georgia, as he maintained. Walker isn't a former agent for the FBI either, and he never worked in law enforcement, despite insisting both were true. Matters only worsened during his election campaign, when 2 women alleged that Walker, a hardline pro-life advocate, had pressured them into having abortions, and they had the receipts to prove it. Speaking to Sean Hannity on Fox News, Walker called the allegations a flat-out lie.
But I can tell you right now, I never asked anyone to get an abortion. I never paid for an abortion, and it's a lie.
Even some of Walker's campaign advisors didn't believe anything he said, however, and several labeled him a pathological liar. As one staffer said, "He's lied so much that we don't know what's true." Then, when news broke that Walker had a secret son and 2 other kids he had kept under wraps, his son Christian went off in a series of tweets. "How dare you lie and act as though you're some moral, Christian, upright man? You've lived a life of destroying other people's lives. How dare you?" In 2008, Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich was arrested after an FBI investigation revealed he had tried to sell Barack Obama's vacant seat in the Senate. According to bugs inside Blagojevich's home and office, speaking about Obama's seat, he said, "I've got this thing and it's golden, and I'm not just going to give it up nothing." Following the arrest, Blagojevich insisted he had done nothing wrong. 2 years later, he was convicted of 17 counts of bribery and attempted extortion and sentenced to 14 years behind bars, making him the 4th governor of Illinois who has been locked up. In 2020, former President Trump, who knew Blagojevich from his stint on Celebrity Apprentice, commuted the former U.S. congressman's sentence and set him free. When Blagojevich came home to his wife Patty and their bungalow on Chicago's North Side, the disgraced former governor opened up to reporters. He said, "It's been a long, long journey. I'm bruised, I'm battered, and I'm bloody." Blagojevich added that he sees himself as a freed political prisoner who now hopes to turn an injustice into a justice.
I didn't know how corrupt the criminal justice system was until it did it to me, and that was a wake-up call.
Ray Nagin is yet another politician who promised to crack down on corruption only to fall foul of it himself. New Orleans was reeling from Hurricane Katrina, the most expensive natural disaster in American history. Prosecutors say Mayor Nagin made an awful situation even worse, lining his own pockets in the process. In 2014, Nagin was convicted of 20 counts of bribery, fraud, and money laundering. Assistant Inspector Howard Schwartz said, "In this case, under these circumstances after Katrina, it was reprehensible what Nagin did. The city needed someone to be a true leader, and he let everybody down." In 2016, Nagin was profiled on CNBC's American Greed, which explored how the accountant became one of the nation's most crooked politicians. He used his power to manipulate millions of dollars in city contracts, took illegal kickbacks, and diverted business to his own granite company. Nagin, who was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, was released in 2020. Naturally, some weren't thrilled about Nagin's early release. Rafael Goyeneche, president of a private anti-corruption watchdog group, said, "I think he probably received more consideration from the Federal Bureau of Prisons than he gave to the people of the city of New Orleans when he committed the corrupt acts that sent him to the penitentiary." But it didn't last long. In 2022, Nagin was back in court, claiming he was living paycheck to paycheck and insisting he can't afford his court-mandated restitution payments. According to financial records, however, he earns more than $150,000 a year. According to PBS, Bill Clinton will go down in history as one of the most successful presidents of the 20th century. Yet, despite his accomplishments, most Americans associate him with the mother of all sex scandals, his affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The story first came to light in 1998, but the president emphatically denied the allegations in a news conference. He infamously said,
"I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky."
After Clinton admitted lying about the affair, he faced a lengthy impeachment trial that played out on TV over several weeks. In 1999, Clinton was acquitted of perjury and obstruction of justice. Lewinsky has since become an outspoken advocate for the Me Too movement. In a 2021 podcast appearance, she revealed, "My narrative was stolen and then I lost it by trying to recede, trying to run away from everything that had happened for many years." The writer shared that she had suffered suicidal ideations following the media frenzy surrounding the scandal. In Hillary, a 2020 documentary series about Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton says he feels terrible about the affair. Addressing what Hillary was apparently going through at the time, he admits,
It was awful what I did.
For a while, North Carolina Senator John Edwards seemed like the frontrunner for the 2008 Democratic presidential nomination. That is, until he found himself stuck in the middle of a sex scandal that derailed his career. Leading up to the election, Edwards began an affair with Riel Hunter, a videographer he hired to produce a film about his campaign. In 2007, the National Enquirer broke the news that Hunter was pregnant with the then-senator's child. In 2012, Edwards faced 6 charges of corruption based on federal prosecutors' claims that he took $1 million in campaign contributions to hide his affair from the public and his wife Elizabeth. He was found not guilty of the campaign fund violation, but the jury was deadlocked on the other 5 counts. Nevertheless, Edwards' reputation was shattered. Elizabeth Edwards, who was diagnosed with cancer in 2004, died before her husband stood trial. In 2019, John Edwards joined his daughter Kate, also an attorney, and his former business partner David Kirby to establish their own personal injury law firm in North Carolina. He told WRAL, "Sometimes we can't make everything exactly right, but we can usually help people. It feels like you're actually able to do something with your life that means something." On March 19, 2003, former President George W. Bush announced he was sending American troops to Iraq to defend the world from the threat posed by Saddam Hussein. Speaking from the Oval Office in a nationally televised address, he explained,
"The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder."
As it turns out, that wasn't exactly an accurate assessment. In a 2006 news conference, the president admitted he hadn't told the American people the whole story. The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. According to Brookings Intelligence Project director Bruce Riedel, Bush wanted Americans to believe Saddam Hussein was the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks, even though he wasn't. As of the latest report from the U.S. Department of Defense, nearly 4,500 American service members died in Operation Iraqi Freedom, which officially ended in 2011. In 2010, looking back at the U.S.-led invasion that had dragged on for 8 years, Bush told The Guardian, "There are things we got wrong in Iraq, but the cause is eternally right." Richard Nixon, the United States' 37th president, holds the dubious distinction of being the only American president to resign from office. In 1974, Nixon stepped down in the wake of mounting pressure from his constituents and GOP leaders. It had all begun to fall apart 9 months earlier when Nixon faced tough questions during a nationally televised Q&A with news editors across the country. The former U.S. Senator denied any involvement with the scandal and cover-up surrounding the break-in at the Watergate complex.
"Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got."
In response to allegations that he had bartered political favors for campaign contributions from large corporations, he said,
"But in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service."
Speaking to ABC News, David Folsom, author of Nixon's Darkest Secrets, called the former president the most corrupt president in America's history. He added, "Nixon's scandals went beyond Watergate." Nixon was subsequently granted a full presidential pardon by his successor, Gerald Ford. In CNN's 2020 series Race for the White House, Ford's son Stephen explained his father felt that America needed recovery, not revenge. He said, "The idea was to get Nixon out of the way, heal the nation, and go forward."